This is my parts bill of material for a maintenance cycle to be undertaken on my 2011 Kawasaki Concours. And what we have from right to left is Mobil 1 synthetic gear oil. This 1 quart should last for at least 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 full changes. The rear drive gear doesn't use very much. Motorcycle oil is different than car oil, and I elected on this new to me motorcycle to use a true motorcycle oil, and the one that I saw with the best recommendation seemed to be the Mobil 1 Racing 4T. The 10W to 40 viscosity seems to exactly match what is specified in the manual for the Concours engine. Followed up by 2 filters. K&N seems to be well regarded, and I got the K&N oil filter. It has an interesting addition that if you'll notice at the top of the oil filter, it is wrenchable. It has a protrusion to the downside, what would be the downside on the motorcycle, that allows you to put a wrench on and spin that on and off. Then we have the high flow air filter, K&N. This was not cheap. I believe using Amazon Prime it may have been something like $46. That of course includes shipping. But I don't think there are any real good alternatives that are substantially less expensive, and the K&N seem to be well regarded. So these are the components that I need in order to accomplish my oil change, oil filter, air filter, and gear oil. Here is my tool assortment for doing the air filter job on the Kawasaki Concours 2011 model. Starting from the right, we have a 10mm socket. This will be required to remove certain bolts. To the left of that is an 8mm socket, and then in order to remove Allen screws, there is a 4mm socketed Allen wrench, followed by a 5mm, a 3/8 inch ratchet and ratchet extension. Obviously, if you don't have these socket Allen wrenches, it would be perfectly acceptable to use a regular Allen wrench. And I suppose if you don't have 10mm and 8mm sockets, it would be possible to use 10mm and 8mm wrenches. The socketed tools make the job easier. Going over, then here you'll see a pair of needle nose pliers. Those needle nose pliers are very helpful to compress an electrical quick disconnect that will be shown during the video. And then these 4 tools finally are useful to work with the quick rivets, of which there are about a half a dozen, and they need to be removed. The first on the right is a nail that I bent to be able to kind of get around corners and press the middle pin through to release the quick rivets. Then there is a spring hook, which is useful in grabbing a hold of the quick rivet behind the windshield. In order not to have to remove the windshield, the big flat-headed screwdriver is to press down on the rivet behind the windshield, and then the big dowel is to push the rivets in and make them seat. And that should be about all of the tools that you'll need for this particular job. The first piece of plastic that will need to come off is, I think, referred to as the gas tank cover. You'll need a 5mm Allen wrench, and I'm using it with a 3/8 inch ratchet and extension. Just pull these 3 bolts out, Allen bolts. Come up pretty easily. Set them to one side, and what I'm going to do is each time I pull a piece, I'm going to keep the bolts that came with it with that piece and set them out sequentially over in one area of my workshop. That way I won't have to be wondering which bolts go where when it gets back to time to reassemble. So there's my 3rd bolt. You notice it's kind of corroded, and that's because the well that it goes into is probably a water catcher, and it probably sits in there. So take those 3 bolts, put them with this gas tank cover, and set to one side. The next step is to remove the glove box. There are 2 quick rivets holding this into the opening in the front middle, or the middle fairing. And again, what we do is we reach in, we push down on the quick rivet to release them, like so. You'll hear them click. Then you should be able to just lift them out. A little bit more on the quick rivet while I have them in hand. Right now, this quick rivet is totally depressed so that it's loose enough that the projections on the side will slide back out. When I put it into the hole, I should have it so that the pin on the end of the center punch portion of the quick rivet is all the way back. That allows me to stick it in, like so. And then what happens is I need to push it down in order to re-secure that quick rivet. And to that end, what I use is a punch that's a dowel in order to push that down to secure it. I'll show that process when I go through the reverse assembly. The next step in order to get the glove box all the way out of the compartment is to release the quick electrical connection, which you will see right here. I'm not certain if you can see this, but there is a corrugated tab right here, and you will find that it's extremely difficult to depress this properly to get that to release. And a pair of needle nose pliers judiciously applied like so makes this very easy to come out. This was really defeating me the first time. Get those needle nose pliers and use those. Set this to one side in sequence of disassembly. Now to work on removal of the fairing, middle fairing cover. You're going to need a 4mm Allen wrench. First 2 are up near the dashboard. Once they're released, they should be pretty easy to come off by spinning by hand. There's the first two. Now the next one is down behind the grip warmer switch. This one did happen to have a nylon washer. They may have all had, but might have been lost in previous removals. This is a trick that I hope to be able to pull off in order to be able to do the air filter exchange without having to remove the entire middle fairing. That's what this is called right here, middle fairing. What happens with this piece of Tupperware is that it is secured by something called a quick rivet that's right here, and if you'll notice, that is behind the windshield. When I first explored underneath the Tupperware, so to speak, I found that I couldn't do this unless I pulled this windshield, because it obscured my access to this quick rivet. I'll explain more about a quick rivet shortly, but basically with a quick rivet you need to pop the center part of the rivet down into the guts of the rivet and then lift it out. If you have the right tool, and I made a very simple tool using a 16 penny nail that you see right here, and I put it on my vise and I bent it. With this I can get in and I can push that center part of that quick rivet down into the body that should allow me to lift the rivet out. Basically, the rivet, when it's pushed down into the center portion, it goes flush with the top of the rivet, and that secures it. If you push it further, it makes it loose. And the other thing that I'm using in order to make that happen, I have here a dental spring hook, and you may be able to find something else that'll do just as well, but this spring hook should allow me to get underneath that windshield and lift up on that quick rivet and bring it out. With this being brought out like so, I have now negated the need to pull off my windshield in order to get this piece off. And I'm pretty proud of that, because taking that windshield off is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bolts, and taking the windshield off, putting it to one side, it's not a simple process. I mean, it's simple, but it's not trivial either. Now, this side pocket will come off easily, and you'll find that there are 2 electrical disconnects that need to come off. These, fortunately, are quite a bit easier. There's one. They're quite a bit easier than the one that I had to use the needle nose pliers on. He says as he's having a little bit of difficulty. There it goes. So there's your removal of the side pocket. Now we continue driving on to remove the middle fairing. If anybody is by this point in time beginning to be absolutely amazed, why in the world do I have to do all of this to change an air filter? Yeah, that was my thought too. But at any rate, we've got one and 2 4mm, 1 and 2 5mm, and 1 quick rivet, and I think that'll get this fairing cover off. So here goes the first 4mm. Be careful to look for the nylon washers. Next 4mm. Okay, now we switch to the 5mm socket. Okay. Somehow. Continuing with removal of the 2 5mm Allen. And finally, quick rivet. I didn't want to bore you with my fumbles, but when I pushed this quick rivet in, it did push in, but the surface of this was very difficult to make come loose from the outside of this fairing. Fortunately, you can reach in behind and I could push and pull and fool around with that, and I got it to come out quite nicely by doing that from behind. And these are not, in my opinion, they're not a perfect situation, so you have to finagle with them sometime. But now, at this point in time, I should be able to, there are tabs that these slide into in order to make the proper interface with this piece and with this piece, and I should be able now to get this to slide out. He says, aha! There's another quick rivet right there. I had forgotten about that. Let me pop that out, and then I'll be able to complete this disassembly. You don't even see this guy. That was the culprit that was keeping me from popping that cover off. Okay. it's just as much fun getting it to meet up with all of these tabs. But as you can see right here, there is a protrusion that has to mate up, which is this piece right here, and it's going to mate up someplace up in here, I forget where. That'll be more clear when we get it all back together. But it does come apart, does go back together, you just got to finagle with it a little bit. There you see what they call a bracket. Has a piece of foam on the back of it, and that is obscuring the air filter, which is this rectangular piece where you see the arrow there. In order to remove the air filter, we've got to pull that bracket out of the way. Fortunately, we don't need to disconnect the electricity, and you will find that on the back of this bracket there is a couple of 10 millimeter bolts that need to be removed. Let's see, where are they? There's one, and I know there's another one here someplace. There were two for sure. As I get into it, I'll expose the other one. Now to remove the 10 millimeter bolts. And there's number one. Number two, it's hard to see because it goes back in through, and it's kind of covered up with this foam piece right here, but it's right there next to this frame member, I guess, or this strut. So that's where you look for that. Okay. There's your two 10 millimeters out. Now this piece right here can be moved out of the way, and it exposes this plate right here to be able to be removed. Next step is 8 millimeter for these two bolts here. Okay, here we go with the 8 millimeter bolt removal on the air cleaner cover. I think I need my extension here. There's my first 8 millimeter bolt. And there's my second. I'm now capable of removing the air cleaner cover. Looks like this. got a foam backing. In order to get unimpeded access to the air filter, you're going to need to take this bracket that's now loose, and you're going to need to lift it out. And the foam just kind of fits around in there. You're going to need to lift it out and move it so that you can get good access. Now here, what there is, let me move so you can get a better angle on this. What there is here is, you will see that the air filter itself has a slot that allows you to stick a good sized flat blade screwdriver in and bring that out. You can see I got it started out now. Once you get it going, it comes out just about straight side to side. And I can already tell that this air filter replacement is a worthwhile thing to do. As you can see, it's a little bit nasty. Next step, inserting the new filter. Notice it's got foam on all four sides. It goes in. This is the new K&N air filter. It is, quote, washable and reusable. This is the old stock air filter, looking pretty nasty, as you can see. The instructions on this K&N states that we need to apply grease to the three sides that are not to the outside where the grooves are to pull out of the motorcycle. So they supply you with a tube of air filter sealing grease, it's called, and this is going to go side 1, side 2, and side 3. There is a ledge that goes into slot in the motorcycle, and it is flat on one side, 45-degree angle on the other side. My assumption is that we put the grease on top of the flat side of this rubberized groove, and I'm about to do that. I'm not going to bore you with watching this process, so I'll come back when this is done. I have now applied this grease to all three sides that they specified, and it's time to insert the air filter into the motorcycle. And they specify these slots that you stick a screwdriver into to pull out. That goes up, and you'll easily see that in the housing for the air filter, the long side goes to the back of the motorcycle, the short side goes to the front. I'm not going to have you watch me fumble to get this in there, but there are rails that it goes on, and I'll come back to this video when I get it most of the way inserted. Okay, I've got the new air filter properly interfaced with the guide rails, and at this point in time it's just a push to get it all the way in. And that is in far enough so that the air filter cover will fit over it properly. As I said, these grooves that you use to pull it out, they're facing up, and the long side to the back of the motorcycle. New air filter installed. Make a couple of observations here. is not an easy job. It's tedious. You've got a lot of things to disassemble. You have to get everything lined up back together correctly. I don't know what would be charged to do this job at the Kawasaki dealers. They're probably a lot better at it than I am. Maybe they can do it in an hour, plus the part being the air filter. I don't know. I suspect that they're going to charge $150 or something like that for this job. That's just a wild guess. Have no idea. I got it done for the cost of the part. I also learned a little bit more about the innards of the motorcycle. I found out where the coolant tank is, how to refill that, which basically you have to do about 3/4 of this job. And you know, it was quote a bonding experience with the motorcycle. It probably shouldn't be this difficult, but it is. There's just no shortcut other than this particular one where the windshield doesn't necessarily have to come off in order to get this piece right here out. So I hope this little video has been useful to you. One of the primary purposes that I have in doing this video is that I am reasonably able to do things, but unlike some people who do a job once and the next time they come to do the job in 6 months or a year or something like that, they know exactly everything that they did before. I'm not that way, and I intend to use this myself the next time that I go in there to clean this air filter, because this K&N air filter that I got does say that it is washable and reusable, and at $46 or something like that a pop, I think that's a good thing. So thank you very much for your attention. If anybody has managed to suffer all the way through this video, I don't know yet. I haven't cut it in my video editing software how long the whole process will be, but you know, it probably took me wall clock time at least 2 hours to do this job. So thanks a lot.